Hey guys, welcome back to Founder to Founder. I'm Arianna Cruz, founder of More Magazine, where we work to make opportunities reachable for everyone, and we do that by curating content intended to educate, inspire, and call people to action. We most recently released our issue 3, Women and Culture, where we dive into how the two interact with one another, as well as with a variety of topics. Today, I'm so excited to be sitting with Gretchen of Mama Ochre. I've met you at a few different pop-ups, was fangirling over Instagram, and now I'm so excited to be sitting in her studio today. Saturday morning, we got cups of tea, the vibe is set, and I'm super excited to dive into this today. So do you want to start with sharing a little bit about you, the name, and kind of how you got started?
Yeah, so my name's Gretchen. I am the founder of Mama Ochre. I live out here on a little bit of land with my 4 kids, my husband, Tom, 10 chickens, our dog, our Aussie Moon, and our cat Sunny, who is totally just basking in the sun under the table here. And yeah, I started Mama Ochre 2.5 years ago. Started as a vintage, mainly just vintage company. Had a really boho, neutral vibe. I only sourced silk, linen, cotton, natural textiles in a really tonal palette. And then, I guess I've been thrifting my whole life. So, yeah, like growing up, I remember the round racks at Goodwill that I would hide in, like when my mom would take me to Goodwill. But once it got into high school, it was more for survival. We moved to Zionsville from Pike freshman year, and like all of a sudden clothes meant everything, just like being able to fit in and keep up with the Joneses. Like Goodwill was my means to do that. So it's always been a part of my life, but just 2.5 years ago, I finally decided to make that jump to make it my business. So.
That's awesome. I feel like, I'm just going to be totally transparent. We did this interview and I was not recording, so we're redoing it because now what you said, I said that we had such a good conversation, we're going to try to recreate it, but hearing what you're saying, I have other things now that I also want to talk about.
Let's do it. Let's just go for it. It's a secret.
I know. I'm just like transparent.
Yeah, it's okay. You're
better to just face it head on.
Right.
But you just mentioned like clothes being everything, and previously we talked about self-identity and perception of self, and it made me think about how much we use clothes as like a way to express ourselves. And so I think that's also really interesting because growing up there's always those trends, but then it's like also such a weird balance of like trends and then who you are and like bringing them together.
Ooh, I just got chills. Okay, so yes, and there were so many times through middle school and high school that the word poser was super big. I'm 31, so I don't.
No, we said poser too.
Oh God, and that was like chilling when somebody would call me a poser because I wore a rancid shirt after, wearing a bright eyed shirt the day before. I'm like, listen, everything. One of my favorite quotes by Cy Swoon on Instagram is, constantly adapting, evolving, shapeshifting, whatever. I think I mixed that up, but. It's life, right? Like we have our sense of self, and clothes are that is our way of expressing ourselves, but we change, and and that's why I feel like it is important to prioritize sustainability when those changes come through, because then at least you're just keeping it circular rather than like constantly reaching for a new item every time you feel, like you want to look like a bookworm that day or something, like you go through your phases. So,
and I feel like that's part too. I feel like I don't want to beat a dead horse because this is like a conversation a lot about how trends fuel fast fashion. But I feel like there is a way to stay up with trends without always gravitating towards those. And obviously at different points in your life you're able to afford different things. But I feel like secondhand shopping gives you that chance to be trendy, like I mean, everything comes back in style. So I feel like everything at Goodwill right now is coming back in style because it's stuff from like the early 2000s.
Right.
And so I think it's a really nice way to balance them. And okay, so back to like the sense of self. Mama Ochre, the name of it. Can you talk about how those two kind of came together and how they both kind of reflect pieces of who you are?
Yes. So funny story. Only recently, when I was doing an interview for Indie Monthly, did I realize, or did I really have the time to process and realize what the name Mama Ochre meant to me. Because it really just came super intuitively when I started this business, and a lot of the times I'll look back and I'm like, what is it? I get it all the time. What does it mean? You know, or how do you say it? How do you pronounce it? You know, but ochre, that word is the oldest pigment on the earth. So it's been used in so many different forms of expression since the beginning of time, and from body paint to signal social situations, to textiles and garments and so many more things. So it's funny realizing now, after transitioning into a dye-based company, that I kind of had that intuitive moment to name it Mama Ochre, back before I was even dyeing anything. But the mama part of it is because I was at a crossroads when I started Mama Ochre. The business that my husband and I owned, the car dealership, closed. So I was kind of in between deciding whether I wanted to take a job that was 9 to 5, that would have consistent income, and then, or starting my own business. And my husband was a huge cheerleader for me to start it. You know, you got this, like, you know what you're doing, you've done this for lots of other people before, like, super believed in me. But also my youngest daughter, I'd been a stay-at-home mom as well, and my youngest daughter was finally like old enough to go to preschool. So the mama part of it was harnessing that, you know, that was still a huge part of my life, and I wanted to maintain that relationship with my children that I was able to do as a stay-at-home mom. But also it was time for me to reclaim my identity publicly and creatively, and alone, you know. And so Mama Ochre is kind of a dual definition of me, really.
That's so cool. I feel like I know that when we were talking like pre-interview, I was asking what do you want to focus on, and you said sustainability, and I feel like you just have such a mindset that is focused on sustaining so many different pieces of your life. We talked about sustainable money habits previously. A lot of what you do right now is sustainable clothing and home goods, but I feel like even your mindset is sustaining because, I mean, you wanted to reclaim who you are so that you could best continue like being present in the home. And I think that's so important. And I feel like my mindset as I'm getting older is definitely shifting. I don't have kids yet, but I'm definitely realizing that your cup has to be filled before you can flow into others.
Definitely.
And I think that's amazing that you took that and you harnessed it to turn it into such a beautiful brand with just such intention and like all that you do. I know, do you want to talk a little bit about how you source? Because you said that you started as a secondhand curating, and then you brought the dyeing aspect in. So how do you maintain now kind of as not a manufacturer, but like to some extent of clothing and home goods? How do you continue that sustainability aspect?
Yeah, well, the transition happened pretty organically. I did a few accidental dye processes trying to remove stains from garments before the pandemic actually officially happened.
Yeah.
And those pieces sold like instantly. So I kind of like trickled those in throughout, but once we went into lockdown or whatever, sourcing was off the table. I really had to just start pulling back stock in garments, and a lot of the back stock was back stock because I thrifted it and then was like, why did I put this, you know, like off colors and stuff. So I really started to dye heavy during lockdown, and I think that flow is what kept me mentally okay. You know, just continuing to like get up and have something to do, and without fearing the end result. You know, like it was my own clothing or stuff that I, you know, didn't have a lot of money in. It was vintage that I had sourced, so I just kind of like experimented, trial and error, a lot of error, and then the milk paint process was born. So after that, I basically just started sourcing vintage t-shirts and dresses, anything that was cotton that I could dye. And it was primarily just vintage, but what I realized was I had a lot of clients that the sizes weren't lining up. And so, and not only that, but I wanted to scale. I wanted to be able to wholesale to different boutiques since I don't currently have a brick and mortar. So I was desperately searching for sustainable, ethical, made in the US, workers being paid fair wages and not disposing of waste in the waterways. Sustainable Blanks Company, which like that's so much of a mouthful. It's a lot of boxes to check. And it took me a year and a half to find my supplier, which it's not really a secret. It's on the garments that you get. I don't like hide it, you know, but I am proud of it. And there's only 2 other companies that that I've found that that those boxes are checked in. So that allowed me the opportunity to continue to evolve and adapt and be able to offer a wide range of sizes and quantity instead of just one of ones. So, I mean, you know, vintage pieces, I guess. So.
No, that definitely makes sense. I'm going to ask this question, and I don't want you to think I'm asking it because I don't get it. I want to ask it because I feel like we have so many entrepreneurs that listen in on this, and I always want people to like value themselves and what they're doing fairly and as they should be. And so you talk about having to source and all these boxes to check, and that obviously drives up the prices. Fast fashion is cheap and easy to attain because people aren't paid fairly. They are creating a lot of waste. They are unchecking every possible box. And as we go through these different phases in our lives between like thrifting, fast fashion, and then more of these sustainable pieces that will last us longer, that are considered more of an investment piece, how did you balance figuring out your prices with your time and the resources, as well as like coming in with that mindset of like that you had previously thrifted for survival?
A lot of it was realizing that other people don't value money the way that I had my whole life. Other people either are buying intentionally and saving up, and those things are something that they would rather spend their money on if they don't have a lot of it, or they do have a lot of it and they don't mind spending for a higher quality item. But for quite a while actually, my prices weren't in line with the value and with my time, and I burnt out. I wasn't sustaining myself because I was trying to make things affordable and making, you know, sweatshirts $40 to $50 when the blanks that I'm using are, you know, easily 4 times the price of a Gildan wholesale blank, you know. So the only person suffering was me and my time. And so I really had to like go through, and actually when I had been working at this market for the past year, and when I quit, I really had to re-look at my line sheet and decide how much my time was worth per hour, how long it took to create each garment, and then price it accordingly, you know. And it was nerve-wracking, you know. And even for this Must Be It market, I was like, oh man, like I need to make money, you know. I need to be able to continue, and maybe I should do a sale and drop my prices for this market. you know, $77 is a lot for a sweatshirt, but then, you know, I was like, no, like, I'm not going to short myself. I priced it accordingly. Like, if it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, it doesn't, you know, and just kind of falling into that trust and not having scarcity mindset around it. And then, you know, I sold out of sweatshirts at that market, you know.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
That's so good to hear.
Yeah, and it's just that reaffirmation that, you know, you can't lower your self-worth and your time. And when you're an entrepreneur, it's easy to do that.
Yes, definitely hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good though, and I feel like having those moments of reassurance and the reaffirming and like that reinstilled confidence in what you're doing, those are such big moments, because it like you can feel like shit.
Yeah.
This is it. Like, things are gonna go well, they're not gonna go well, and I feel like getting that spot of sunshine is just so crucial.
Yes, definitely.
Speaking of sunshine though, you have some really exciting things coming up, some pieces coming out.
Yes.
Do you mind handing me that coffee cup and showing us some of those?
Absolutely.
All right, do the thing. Perfect. Oh, I love it. It looks so good. Okay, so tell me about what you're wearing. Tell me what's next up. You can sit down if you want. But yeah, definitely talk about this. I'm so excited.
Yeah, so this is the Noble Carriage utility suit. Noble Carriage started off as a kids clothing company and then kind of merged into kids and adults, so now their name is Noble. But they are a sustainable, ethical, organic clothing company that I have admired since my girls were babies. So I did a collab with them last year with the kids clothing, and I did Milk Painted and Yin Yanged their little bloomers and hats and things like that. But this year they asked me to collaborate on this adult version of the utility suit, which is an organic GOTS certified Pima cotton jumpsuit. It has this awesome cinched waist and pockets. It's literally like super soft. So we did an exclusive pre-order of this. At the same time, they did their first artist feature in their artist series with kind of my story and all that sort of stuff. So super cool opportunity. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you are the artist that is featured then?
Yeah.
That is amazing. Will you show the back of the blazer again too? When I walked in, I didn't even see that since it was hanging the other way. That is so cool though. This
was actually one of the pieces that I was talking about when I just had no end result in mind, and I just kind of was like trying things out. So.
Yeah, that is very awesome. Oh, that is so cool. So what is that like? Bless you. You're okay. What is it like working with a brand that you had looked up to? I mean, I think that's just amazing. I always get geeked when I just get to work with other women that I've been like fangirling over for so much time. So I mean, what was that like for you? Like actually collabing and for a second time?
Yeah. Well, so last year, when they reached out, I was literally I couldn't believe it. You know, I was like, this is an insane opportunity. Super cool. I had actually asked them if, you know, they would be interested in wholesaling me their utility suits or if we could collab on them. And, you know, time is time. And it just kind of like, was like, well, we'll get back to you. And then almost exactly a year later, they reached out to me, and it was at a really weird, sort of like dark place for me. Like it was just kind of I just like quit my job, and I was questioning whether you know, that was the right choice. It was a super easy job for a decent amount of money and very little time, but it just became very clear that it wasn't for me. But I was kind of in just a weird transition, and my self-worth was low. You know, it was like, okay, I'm back in the driver's seat. Back, you know, Mama Ochre is my only means to survive. I have more bills now than I did before, more overhead. You know, I have to have money to place these huge, you know, wholesale orders to make money at events, and so the stress level was higher. And so, you know, when they reached out, it was kind of this nerve-wracking but amazing opportunity to be transparent and vulnerable. That is really hard for me. You know, I like, so much of this brand is like Mama Ochre, it's half me, half, you know. But that being said, a lot of the times, especially through social media, I feel like I'm oversharing, or like, you know, talking about this kind of stuff is like, people don't want to see it, they just want to see a beautiful picture, you know. But I'm getting to this point now, after the Noble Carriage interview, honestly, and really having to dig deep with those questions, where I had to look back and admire how far I've come, and admire what I do and why I do it. And, you know, it kind of brought me out of that darkness, you know, to really just see it for what it is and be proud of it, you know. And so this time around was a little bit different, and definitely like was like a hand, you know, that I grabbed. So I'm really grateful for Noble and for that opportunity. So
that's awesome. And I feel like this is gonna sound very meme-ish, but I did a reel with the Mulan with Eddie Murphy's like dishonoring you and your whole family or whatever. And I did it, and I was trying to figure out what I want, because I like the sound, it's obviously fun. But I was like, what do I not do enough of for myself? And it was like, I don't acknowledge how hard I've worked to like get this magazine or whatever like off the ground. And I feel like you also saying that, I feel like so many of us, and honestly I feel like women, I was reading an Indie Maven article talking about Burnout from Leslie, and it talks about how I feel like as women we have all these different roles, and like we take responsibility for things that necessarily aren't our responsibility. And so I feel like no matter how much we keep like achieving and doing, we keep raising that like finish line for ourselves, or moving the finish line. And so I think making sure that we take time to acknowledge how amazing we are, how hard our journey was, and like how much we persevered and came through it, like it means a lot, even if it's just like telling yourself in the mirror or just acknowledging it.
100%. Sorry, my girls, yes.
No, that's okay. We got a little fan section going on. Our live audience, if you will.
No, I got chills again when you said that, because that's so much of it, especially, you know, for me personally, that was kind of that dark place, was like, okay, like my responsibilities don't stop. So, you know, when Mama Ochre is my full time, it takes every inch of me, you know, and I have to have the gratitude to look back so that I can take a break, you know, so that I can be like, okay, this market was amazing. Now I'm going to rest, you know, instead of like, okay, that's over. Now what am I doing next? And I got to prepare for this, because there's always more. Right. Constantly more. You know, and you don't really have that break of like the weekend that you get from a 9 to 5, or you know, like you have interviews on the weekend, you know, and like your schedule is just kind of up to you to create that space. And you know, oh man, there's the women part, like the Indie Maven part, that's huge. You know, I take so much responsibility of our home being clean, and the kids, and the groceries, you know, like everything that I have to really hold my boundaries and verbalize what I'm not going to do anymore, because even though, you know, I wake up, my husband goes to work.
We are having a little bit of technical difficulties today. So our interview kind of got cut off just at like the very end, right before I asked our final question. And so Gretchen, I think if we can just kind of wrap this up like remotely, I will put these together. But I'm hoping, Gretchen, that you can share with us what you do that makes you feel inspired, whether it's you inspiring yourself, or just what do you do that inspires you?
So by definition, inspiration translates into in spirit. And I think in order to get more in touch with spirit, to be inspired, the most important thing to do is to quiet all distractions. So in the past, you know, I would say inspiration was only coming through seeing another artist's work, or being in the presence of amazing live music, which those things definitely still inspire me. But recently I found that my lane, my inspiration that aligns with where I'm going and my purpose, if you will, comes in the quiet moments where I sit with myself and I create an intentional area. For me, it's usually my bathtub. You know, I will create a quiet, distraction-free place where I can just sort of zone out and, you know, meditate or whatever it is to you, and allow those thoughts to come through me instead of, you know, stopping them with the ego or getting in my own head about things I need to do, or replaying the past, worrying about the present or worrying about the future, you know, things like that. I think really allowing that quiet space so that it can flow through you is where my inspiration comes from.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, especially in this interface. But thank you so much for the time and the grace that you've shared today with me as we've kind of worked through this. And thank you all so much for tuning in. We release a new Founder to Founder the third Friday of every single month, and I am so excited to be working on 2022's lineup of founders that I will get to share with all of you. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.